Hello and welcome to the Supernatural track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z. Martin, and tonight we are talking about how they grew up to be heroes. Yes, Sam and Dean, but so many characters saw character growth and change throughout the course of the series. So that's what we're going to be talking about, is how did people grow up over the course of Supernatural. But before we start that, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Sumiko.
Hi, my name is Sumiko Saulson. I am an author of Afro-Surrealism, horror, and of course, paranormal romance. There's that. I've been a fan of Supernatural since season 2. I had to go back and watch the first ones, but it is definitely something that I associate with quality time that I spent with my parents, both of whom also loved Supernatural.
Okay, Lola. You're muted.
My name is Lola Larissy. I was previously muted, but I'm no longer muted. I love Supernatural. I've been watching since the beginning, 2005. Because back then I watched everything on CW anyways. That was my wheelhouse. But I just loved it and I stayed with it till the end. And beyond, obviously.
Okay, Michelle.
I'm Michelle Crowley. I am, I guess, a recent fan of as of 2018, but kind of it's been around. It's been in and out of my life ever since the beginning.
Okay, Janet.
Hi, I'm Janet Walden-West. I write urban fantasy that owes a lot to Supernatural and paranormal and contemporary romance, and I have been a fan from the very first day.
Very well, very good. And I'm Gail Z. Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. But all my modern worlds are ones where Sam and Dean could walk in and feel right at home. I fell in love with the series halfway through season 11, binge watched 12 seasons in 4 months for the start of season 12. And well, the rest is history. So let's talk about how characters grew and changed. You know, the wonderful thing when you get 15 years, 327 episodes with the series is that both the actors and the characters get to grow up. You know, Jared Padalecki says he didn't even have to shave when he started his role as Sam in season 1. I think that might be an exaggeration, but they, you know, they did grow up on screen in front of us, and the characters got to grow up, which is a wonderful thing also, because who wants to watch 15 years of nobody changing or learning anything or doing anything different? So, and we'll do multiple rounds of this, but pick a character and how you think they changed or grew up. Sumiko? You're muted.
Yeah, I know. So interestingly, since the Winchesters is now on and it's just starting up, I'm really looking forward to actually seeing Mary grow up, because we're starting to see that. And I do know that, you know, eventually they're probably going to cast child actors for Sam and Dean, and we're going to see more of them growing up, which is something that we saw a little bit of from, you know, because it kept coming back up during the series. So we probably are going to be seeing, you know, they would replace the child actors from time to time, but we might be following some child actors for a longer period of time. However, I do think that Mary as a character became much more fully fleshed. So I think that, you know, when it first started, Mary was the classic refrigerator girl to Sam and Dean, especially Sam with the tragic way that she died in relation to his, you know, early child, but really for both of them. And you know, even for their father. So she went from becoming a very two-dimensional refrigerator girl character to really having her own, you know, story, her own relationship with her family, that are slayers, with us getting to understand more and more that she is actually the one who was originally out there hunting things and being, you know, a big hero. So it's really almost like more, you know, instead of us initially seeing her grow up and grow into a hero, it was like we were getting her story. And, you know, that the Winchesters really centers her as much as it does, has for me a lot of potential as a sort of more feminist view of someone who originally started out as not really exactly a person.
Okay, Lola.
Okay, so I'll go with Crowley. So when we first meet him, he's about as bad as you can get. He's a crossroad demon. That means that if you want something and you're willing to give up your soul, you go to him and you get what you want and you give up his soul. So he's the ultimate corrupter as far as us humans go. And then he becomes king of hell. So that's pretty, you know, that's pretty bad too, right? You know, can't get much worse than that. But then, you know, he kind of grows fond of the Winchesters. And I think he kind of likes being on Earth because he likes whiskey. And he just likes hanging out at a bar with the boys, even though he won't really admit it. He just likes it. And then the whole thing with him getting human blood kind of turns him back to human again. And eventually he won't admit this, but he turns into an okay kind of guy to the point where he sacrifices himself for his boys. So that's a true arc, I think. That's probably one of the most profound arcs on the show.
Okay, Michelle.
Well, hot on the heels of Crowley, let's talk about Rowena. And when we first see Rowena, she's very out for herself, very individualistic, and you know she'll do whatever she can in order just to survive another day. But not just that, she also is going to live a life of luxury while doing so as well, and doesn't care who gets in her way. And it really does take her a lot longer than Crowley, though, to come around to the boys, because we see her almost up through like the end of the Amara darkness line. It took her that long to kind of come around and be like, okay, well, maybe these guys aren't my mortal enemy. We're not friends yet, but we're not mortal enemies. And then, you know, she comes to terms with the fact that, you know, one of our heroes, Sam, is going to be the one that ends her life. And then she kind of, at that point, again, very self-centered though, comes to say, all right, I'm going to have to befriend these guys or else they're going to kill me before I'm ready, before I want to be killed, if I ever do. So, and then we end up ultimately seeing her sacrifice herself. So yeah, Sam ended her life, but the reason that it happened was actually of her own, it was in self-interest on one hand, but it was also in order to save essentially the world with the large fissure that opened up and in the beginning of season 15. So we see this, and then of course she comes Queen of Hell, and still she keeps that whole like out for me powerhouse woman thing going, but we do see her soften, we see her come back around, and it's you know, going from mortal enemy, terrible enemy of the Winchesters up to essentially marriage counseling between Dean and Castiel when they're sitting awkwardly there in hell in that one scene in season 15.
Well, I mean, only Rowena could turn death into a promotion, really. I mean, you know.
Yes.
How about you?
I'm going to have to do a nod to the title of tonight's panel and go with Bobby. He had a shorter character arc than some, but I felt like he always had such an impact on the boys. And he started out so isolated and closed off. I mean, just to the point of his house is in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by a junkyard, a really angry dog, you know, and he's kind of removed himself emotionally because of what happened to his wife. You know, his marriage ended terribly. They never have kids. He never intended to have any. And even, you know, when they first start, when we see him with the boys, you know, he's threatening to shoot them. But then over the course of it, he becomes so much more involved. And it goes from, okay, I need to mentor them because their father was, the worst, to the point where it's like, these are my sons. I adopted them and they became heroes. And even though, especially with Dean, it's always, John and his shadow over everything, I still feel like Bobby is the one that was their biggest paternal influence. He was there. He tried to teach them, to be good people aside from being good hunters.
Okay. I'm going to say Dean, because I think that Dean makes a tremendous amount of character growth, particularly in several of the last seasons. Early on, he's so fueled by anger and wanting to prove himself and be validated by his father, and going by the rules and not seeing the gray and holding a grudge. And as we get into some of those later episodes, particularly, Dean's seen how much damage that has done. And we get a wonderful scene between him and Sam in the bunker where Dean says, I've let go of all of that. I've forgiven all of that. All that matters is we're here together now. And that's a huge step forward for the Dean that we knew in the early seasons. We see Dean in Lebanon, the episode that brings John back for an evening. And they, while both boys get some much needed validation from John, Dean says, I'm okay with who I am and with who we are and what we've done. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. I wouldn't undo it. I wouldn't unmake it. And that's being able, for a hunter especially, to sit comfortable in their own skin, and especially for a Winchester, that's a huge amount of growth. So I'm going to go on round one with Dean. Round two, starting with Lola. We've got lots of characters to pick from.
I would say Jack. He started off as like a baby, and then within a day, he was like a 3-year-old, and he kept the mentality of a 3-year-old for a while, and then, a child, and he was just amazed by everything that happened. He didn't understand how anything worked. He was like the, wide-eyed child trying to figure out the world. And then by the time the end, he figured out finally how to use his powers without killing anybody. And he was able to accept all the power of God and become the greatest being in the universe. So that's a pretty good arc for just a few years.
Yeah. Michelle.
All right, here's your unpopular opinion for the evening. Metatron.
Yeah.
So he starts off just as the character that he's got a scheme. Like he's almost as diabolical and almost 10 steps ahead of everyone else, like Crowley was. And he's very much out for himself and playing the long game, as it were. Now, even though he's not a fan favorite, usually people talk about he was one of the worst villains that the series saw, but from a writing point of view, from a character arc point of view, he has a really good redemption story. We just didn't like him in between. But the fact that he went from being self-centered and very much out for himself, and he knew all along that what he was doing with Castiel was gonna shut the gates of heaven, and that was his whole power grab and whatnot, and he played everyone else for the fool. But at the end, when he sacrifices himself in order to give our heroes some time and satisfy Amara for a little bit, from a writing standpoint, it was a good story arc. From a fan standpoint, no one liked him. Though, on the other hand, I kind of admire him for that. So he really does go through the transformation and really like the hero's journey almost. And one of the things that pushes him along was the fact that he sees what Chuck has in store and says, wow, that's worse than what I had planned. And you're supposed to be the almighty. So he has that mindset change midway through his story arc, and then kind of brings himself back around to the positive side at the end.
Okay. Janet.
I'm going to go with Chuck. And I guess you could argue that his arc really isn't an arc because his whole thing is deception. But at the same time, he gets bonus points for, just really pulling it over the boys' eyes and the fans. He did that. They're neurotic, just pitiful writer so well. And then he moved on to just such a tortured soul as a prophet, having to see these things and not being able to stop them. He knows what's going to happen. And then, oh, wait, he's God, except God sucks. So he pulled off the biggest twist for me for the entire show, I think.
Now, not to take away from Rob Benedict, but it's very possible that wasn't something known or planned from the very beginning.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it wasn't.
They
I'm
weren't
sure it
expecting to
wasn't.
run 15 seasons. So, it's easier to keep a secret if nobody knows it.
Mhm.
But I'll give you that. Yeah, he definitely, after we're sure that was in the works, he definitely played his cards close to his vest. Well, I'm going to go with Sam because we see Sam grow up a lot. And of course, he was 22 when we see the pilot. And like a lot of people in their early 20s, they think all the answers are as far away from home as they can get, and find out that maybe no, the answers are inside. And Sam has several moments, particularly one in season 9 when he's talking with Charlie and says, I used to think I wanted these things, and now I realize this is my life and I'm good at this, and this is where I belong, but I can't do it without my brother. And coming to the realization that there's no place like home, and that this really was what he was good at doing as long as he could do it with Dean. I think that put a lot of in this show, you can't say put somebody's demons to rest because that's literal, but put a lot of his angst to rest and made him, again, much more comfortable in his skin when he didn't feel like it would be better somewhere else. And he realized, no, this is good. This is where I belong. And that's a huge growth element for that character. Sumiko.
So I'm gonna go with Kevin Tran. First of all, he literally was in high school when he first got on the show. So this is one of the, characters that we saw the actor grow up along with the character during the show. Also, although they're I'm going to say this as a person of color, I would have loved to have seen even more representation for POCs on the show than there was. And Kevin was the first, person of color who showed up and had sort of a character arc throughout the story, as opposed to some of the hunters who showed up as adults and were basically, friends of Bobby. And, not to say that they didn't have story arcs, but he was on the show, for 2 seasons and then came back and, made appearances in other ones later. Also, he had to make sacrifices as someone who was really still very young. And I also found the relationship with his mother very touching, and the degree to which he tried to keep his obligations to his family, but also keep his mother parenting him, even, after he was dead, really. And his mother was very protective towards him. I thought that was kind of sweet and stuff. But I think that for someone who had to mature really quickly, that he was really, he actually really was a big hero. We know he was a big hero.
He never got to take his AP test. I mean, that poor kid.
Yeah, and I think his girlfriend got possessed.
And killed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Michelle. Well, wait, let me start out. I should have said round 3. Now go, Michelle.
All right, so let's see, round 3. Hendrickson. the FBI agent that was charged with finding Sam and Dean in season 2 with the shapeshifter. So he shows up on the scene, and he's very much by the books, DC cop, I'm out to get these fugitives, they're dangerous. And I think he's a really good representation of how most of our world people would probably come in contact with Sam and Dean. So we have just the facts. They're grave robbers. They burn bones. They murder. Blah 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 blah. Evaded police for so long. I think most of us would come on to Sam and Dean the same way that he did, but once his eyes are opened, once they finally figure out, oh hey, what Sam and Dean are actually doing, they are the good guys, and there's a much bigger evil out there, he turns really quickly. And so he's still maintaining his honor and his duty towards the country, being the FBI agent, hunting down bad guys, making sure that the good guys win the day. He still maintains that ultimate goal, even though it did lead to his death. But I wish we could have seen him as a hunter. I think that would have been interesting. Like if they would have found him in the alternate universe and he was a hunter or something, I think that would have been really interesting to see. But yeah, Hendrickson, gone too soon.
Mm-hmm. Janet.
Garth. He starts out such a hot mess, and he desperately wants to belong. He desperately wants to be a hunter and part of Sam and Dean's team. And then it really is a twist when, oh, Garth's a werewolf. But he handles it so well. He has a family. He's a dentist. He's a professional. And he goes from wanting the validation of belonging to them, of having a place, to kind of being the most stable and well-adjusted character of the bunch. And at the very end, he's actually, giving the guys advice on life and what really matters. So he had the best arc, I think. It was really sweet to see Garth turn out well and not have some hideous, horrible end.
Yeah. Well, I've got an unpopular opinion here too, but I'm going to say Becky. When we first see Becky, she is a very negative stereotype of fangirls. She's groping Sam. You're so firm, and she's just kind of cringy. And then in season 7, she drops him and ties him up and gets him into a non-consensual wedding. And so there's a lot there to not like. But when we see her again in either season 14 or 15, Becky's grown up. But we saw her in the Supernatural Convention episode where she's kind of dating Rob, but that doesn't go well. And then we see her several years later. She is married. She has kids. Yes, she still loves the fandom. She's running a fan site. She still writes fan fiction, but she's got boundaries and she's got a life, and she is she's not toxic. She understands that there should be boundaries, and she has a strong enough sense of self to stand up to Chuck, even when he poofs away her family and she realizes that he's God, to call him on his crap and tell him that the boys deserve better and he shouldn't do this. And she's taking a huge risk there. So kudos to the writers for giving Becky a redemption arc and seeing her in a positive way when we leave her. But kudos to the character for getting her life together and still holding on to the fandom that she loves, but loving it in a positive and a healthy way. And I thought that was a really interesting arc I didn't expect to get. Sumiko?
Yeah, so yeah, pardon me fading the sun. But it's good because I've got Castiel now, so I guess it's kind of fitting. So if you were watching all the way from the beginning, When Castiel first shows up, he's like a little wooden boy. He's just really like the angels. They're all dicks, and he is just very like, you know, just like angel soldier guy. And Misha Collins is just an incredible actor. So when that character starts to really develop and really show who he really is, you know, the episode where he's talking about how he tried to speak to God, but God wouldn't speak to him, and where we really have to deal with this guy is a fallen angel. It just hits you right there. And, you know, with the episode where his coat is floating and the Leviathans show up, there are a lot. I really have to say that, you know, I have a deep love for this character, and that in terms of character growth and development and arc, that probably is the character that I think really grew and changed actually the most throughout the story, because he became really more human, even though he wasn't supposed to be, because he was an angel, and he really had to reject a whole bunch of things. And considering how, gosh, who God really actually is, I feel like his actions in the end were really, really good choices. Because Chuck, but yeah.
Okay, Lola.
I'm gonna go with Meg. When we first meet her, well, first of all, she has a totally different hair color and she's a totally different person. But she is a demon, though human born, she is a demon, and she does what demons, what you think they do. She serves hell, and she tries to get one up on the Winchesters and, you know, do her little glass bowl things or whatever, and just, you know, she's a thorn in their side. Well, somewhere around the line, she starts to develop feelings for Castiel, and it's kind of neat because we're so used to her being, you know, just the adversary, but then she kind of gets used to the boys and she kind of starts to come around, and she actually watches Castiel when he's in that coma or whatever, you know, when he was bedridden for so long, and she watches him, and it becomes very apparent that she kind of wants to get a little jiggy with him. So I think she had a very big arc, and she ended up, you know, dying basically on the side of good. So that's good.
Okay. Let's go for what's probably our last round. Janet, start us off.
I'm gonna go with Jody. She's if Bobby was the surrogate dad, the good dad they should have had, then Jody was the mom they should have had. And it really is a change for her, because her first introduction to the supernatural is incredibly horrific and traumatic. You know, her son rises and in this horrible zombie moment and tears her husband apart, and she goes from wanting absolutely nothing to do with it, thinking they're all crazy, and then later that they do need to go to prison, to being a very stable and strong maternal figure. She kind of gives the boys some emotional guidance and direction too, at the same time, while she serves as like a concrete resource for them. You know, she can run her interference, she can give them tips. So I thought that was a very lovely arc and matched up really well with Bobby's.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say Donna, because, you know, Donna goes from not knowing about the supernatural at all to those vampires inhibiting 911. And she kind of just takes it in stride. Well, vampires? Yeah, you betcha. You know, she just rolls with it. And she's, you know, we see her first in the episode with the Pishtako, the fat sucking monster, whose brother goes a little crazy on that. And she's so needy. She's so unsure of herself. She's just come off a breakup where her boyfriend has done a lot of body shaming and has made her feel really bad about herself. And she's at this spa to lose weight and try to make herself acceptable to other people as opposed to finding peace with herself. And over the course of the episodes where we see her grow and become a hunter and accept the supernatural and really, deal with tough things, even losing her second Doug over vampires, Donna really emerges as her own woman. And she's got her friendship with Jody, and she ends up working with Jody with the girls who come, to live with Jody. And she really kind of finds a place with her own found family doing what she's good at. And so I think we see a tremendous amount of growth for Donna. Sumiko.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go with Rufus. Rufus really, grows in the story as Bobby's friend. And there's a whole bunch of different times where he does things that really show how close his relationship with Bobby is. And, maybe we don't think about them the same way as we think of Sam and Dean being brothers or, things like that. But he really, he does a lot of things that are really touching in his, very deepening over time relationship with Bobby Singer. He's the one who first introduced Bobby to the world of the supernatural, and they hunted together for many years. I mean, if we're lucky, maybe they'll pop up together in the Winchesters. Just saying, I'd like to see that. He is the one that, helps Bobby to break the deal. And that's another thing. He shows up, and, him and Bobby get to be kind of badass together. And also, I just want to finally say, as someone who's growing older, seeing him and Bobby getting to just be badass as older guys, it really warms my heart.
Okay, great. Lola?
Has anyone said Charlie yet?
Uh-uh.
All right, I'm going to say Charlie Bradbury, because when we first meet her, she's really, she is informed by her trauma. She runs a lot. She never is comfortable. She's not even using her real name. She's just always running away from what happened with her parents. And throughout her time on Supernatural, she kind of learns to accept people as her maid family, such as the Winchesters. And, she has the LARP episode where, she wants to stay. At first, when everything goes haywire there, she's ready to pack her bags. And then she realizes by the end of the episode, I like it here. I have a place. These people like me. I want to stay here. So that made me happy. Of course, she goes to Oz and, the Dorothy thing and all that. I'm so happy that she kind of found her fulfillment before it was taken away from her horribly.
Mm-hmm. Michelle?
I'm going to go with Gadriel. So kind of like with Charlie, he was on the run from his past trauma and his past life, posing as somebody else, and really searching for his own redemption, trying to find his own redemption through subterfuge, of course, but then also once he realizes Metatron's game and whatnot, he also becomes the tragic kind of martyr sort of character, and ultimately sacrifices himself for the betterment of the world. And he was trying for so long to redeem himself, and that was his, he thought that aligning himself with Metatron was going to essentially get him back into the gates of heaven. And try as he might, it kept leading him down the worse and worse path. And so then when he finally decided that, this is the way that I'm going to be able to redeem myself, it had more to do with humanity than it did with his own angelic family. And I think that's another theme, maybe a little bit with Charlie as well, that there's so much more, that there's so many different paths that we can take, and it's not always the most apparent option that may be the best for us.
Okay. Well, we actually do have time for another round. So I'm going to kick it off and say Joe Harville. You know, when we first see Joe, she comes off as feisty, but a little too schoolgirl crush on Dean. I mean, who wouldn't? But still, we don't really take her seriously. Nobody takes her seriously. And she insists on hunting. And first she gets captured, but okay, it was by H.H. Holmes. So he was kind of a grandmaster. But we see her mature, become a better hunter, become better able to handle herself against threats. And in the end, doing her best to try to stop the apocalypse the only way she has available to her. So I think that while we didn't get to spend a lot of time with Joe, we did get to see her grow up. And I love that the writers didn't just leave her this static cardboard cutout that was always the same whenever we came back to her, that for the limited amount of time she got in the story, she did get to grow and mature. Sumiko.
Sam, okay. Like you mentioned, he couldn't shave when he first started. He was a college student. Dean was a hunter, and he, really grew up not only, as a character, but also Jared Padalecki as an actor, and, as time moved on, Jared had to also become more and more complex in the roles that he was portraying. I think the first time that, he really got scary was when they did a flash forward to the future when Lucifer had taken over his body, and he was just, gosh, drifting around in his Christ-like robes, being absolutely terrifying. They made him grow his hair out, which made him look more scary in that role. And after a while, he had to just do Sam in a bunch of different states, possessed by demons. The soulless Sam, that was really pretty good too. So he went through a lot of different changes, yeah.
Okay, Lola.
We're going to do an arc within an episode. How about Mrs. Butters? When she first starts in the episode, she's really creepy. I mean, I get that the Dean was happy because he had breakfast every morning and they celebrated holidays and stuff. But, if you ever read any fairy tales, there's going to be something wrong. I mean, think Hansel and Gretel. There's going to be something wrong with the lady from the woods who has all the food. There's got to be a catch. And of course there is. She is wary of outsiders. She does not like demons. She does not like anyone who is not basically the men of letters. And so she sees Jack and she wants to kill Jack. Well, that can't be done. We can't have Jack being killed. So throughout the course of the episode, she learns that maybe the way things were done back in the 50s is not the way it's going to be done now. And maybe, just maybe, she was a victim and she was held against her will and she was used by Sinclair. So she kind of figures out all this and she goes to live her happy little life in the woods.
Okay. Yeah, Mary Poppins, if you really had her for real, she'd be creepy. Right. Michelle.
Balthazar. Circling back around to my initial theme of self-centered frenemies. So we first see Balthazar when he has stolen the staff of Moses, broken it up into little pieces, and was trying to barter it off to human beings for bits of their soul. And then he goes so far as to unsinking the Titanic because he just hates that Celine Dion song. But then by the end, he gives that line where it's like, is this a bad idea? Yes. Am I going to do it anyway? Yes. Or something along those lines when he talks about aligning with the Winchesters. And at the end, he actually falls victim to Castiel. And just when we're seeing him develop as a character, just when we're seeing the V-necks get a little bit lower on Sebastian Brochet, he's out of our lives.
How about you, Janet?
I'm going to go with Benny. He was a character who so desperately wanted to be good, to overcome what he was from the very beginning. And at first it seemed like he might, he and Dean struck up this bromance. It was more than, just two people in a foxhole. They actually became friends. Here's a hunter and a vampire, but they're working together, and then they get back into the real world, and he has to crash against this whole suspicion that Sam has against him, like all the other hunters do. And he kind of thinks that maybe he's found his place when he finds, his descendant. He can watch over her and take care of her. But no matter how hard he tried, he just can't be the hero that he wants to be. And it ends so sadly for him.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to throw one more out there, and then we can go around and let everybody know where to find us. But Lily Sunders, another character that only got 2 episodes. When we first meet her, she's consumed with anger and vengeance, and she's been very badly hurt and betrayed, and she's lost her family, and all she wants is vengeance. And when we see her again, a number of years later, she's mellowed to an extent, and she knows that she might not get into heaven, but she still does the right thing by Sam and Dean, even if it hurries her final, demise. And that willingness to do something selfless is what changes the scales, the balance in her favor. So for a character that only got 2 episodes, just like Mrs. Butters, I think they gave her a lot of character growth. And I love seeing that because it makes the character so much richer and much more real. So this is the part where everybody goes around and says where we can find you online, starting with Janet.
You can find me everywhere under Janet Walden-West, website, Instagram, TikTok now, but I mostly hang out on Twitter.
Okay, Michelle.
You can find me on Twitter at preheatingprof, and you can find me at lots of the Supernatural conventions and Comic-Cons.
Very good. Lola.
My name's Lola Laracy. I still haven't fixed my website, but you can Google me. I'm there. The only Lola Laracys you're going to find are me and a bunch of dead old ladies, and one day I will be one of them.
Sumiko.
You can find me at SumikoSaulson.com. That's SUMIKO There really aren't any other Sumiko Saulson, so I'm pretty easy to find. Sumiko SKA is what I use for almost all my socials, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. However, on Instagram, that account got locked into my dad's old iPod, so I have Sumiko Saulson.
And I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. Spell the names right and you'll find me. If you use the names on social media, that's where you'll find me too. I'm pretty much everywhere. I do run the Supernatural TFWNC group here on Facebook, and I'm a columnist for the Winchester Family Business blog. But most of the time, you can find me here on Continual. So thank you all so much for being here. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up, so we'll see you online.